Homepage is a free and open source dashboard with lots of integrations for services and info widgets that you might find useful. It's one alternative to Heimdall and many other such dashboards. I've waited a bit to do this video because I've been through sort of 1 or 2 or 3 dashboards and I came off Heimdall, which I was very happy with. Mainly because what I liked about Heimdall was you could sort of just configure these things on the fly in the interface. I wasn't sure if I was going to stick it out with Homepage, because Homepage, you really have to sort of add these widgets and these services in the static YAML files. And, you know, the question was that going to work for me? Well, yes, what I have discovered really is that first of all makes it pretty fast to use. And secondly, there's a wealth of information and configurations that you can actually do in those files. So I'm going to today just give an overview of what my homepage currently looks like, and then I'll finish off also sort of going through the configs, and that might help sort out, you know, how I got some things to work like they are, or how I got them to look like they are, because there were 1 or 2 that were a little bit tricky to get working. And of course, I will be sharing those config files as well. So yes, you can see here, this is sort of what it looks like, but you know, you can really customize it and make it look quite good in your own environment. Quite a few features here. I think the big thing for it was the speed. Because it's statically generated, it is very fast to use. And I did once or twice have problems with Heimdall. I seem to remember there was 1 or 2 entries got corrupted where I had to sort of delete them or edit them and recreate them. So in that regard, with these YAML files, I mean, if they don't work, it's going to give you an error. But the moment you've fixed and configured the little spacing maybe, or the indenting, it works, and that's it. It's rock solid after that. It's got some secure API requests, so I will obviously not be showing you my live config files because they are littered with my various API keys. What I've also done is, and I'll show that just now when I show you the mobile view, is I've got my dashboard. I'm not publishing the dashboard to the internet. It's locked into my LAN, and I use Tailscale, or you could use a VPN access. I'll show you how quick and easy that is though to click on and just get to your dashboard. Yeah, I'm not going to go through every single one here, but obviously I'm running mine in Docker. It's got an integration with Docker to show stats for containers and so on. They talk a little bit more about that there. So the big thing really is, these are sort of the key sections you've got here. You've got service widgets that can show various third-party services, and they list a couple over here, but these will actually show you little short summaries of the service running in a widget. And then they've got information widgets. There's not many of them, but there's a couple like system info, stocks, and a few other things there. And then customization. So this will be like your backgrounds, your layout, rows versus columns, that sort of thing. And yeah, they've got a bit of info about starting, and they've got obviously their default Docker compose file or Docker run command over there. We can just briefly have a look at some of these service widgets because it'll give you an idea also then of what it's going to integrate with. So if I go to the service page here, you'll see this is what the widget will look like in the YAML file. And don't worry about it. You'll see once you've got the hang of it, they're actually very easy to do. And these are all fairly standardized. Whether it's an icon, the href just being the link to the actual service, whatever you're going to have, you might even have there 192.168, whatever. Description, what the server is, the container, and that sort of thing down here. This is the widget part. So this is standard, and we can have a look at these just now in a bit more detail, but that is your standards display just to show the item on the home page. But the widget part is what you're going to be adding to add the widget functionality. So it's going to be this part, whatever you need to put in. And to find that out, you could click on any one of these for help and an example of what it needs to look like. So this gives you an idea of what there is. Add guard, what else is there? Calendar, Caddy, Cloudflare tunnels, coin market cap, CrowdSec. There's a couple down here, glances. So for example, if I was to click onto the glances one, you'll see there's more information about glances, but it gives you quite a bit of information. There's the widget part that you're going to basically put in to make glances appear on your dashboard as well. And it's just sort of reminding you here, it doesn't need the href icon or description on its parent service. In other words, that part just above the widget. But there's various further things you can configure here. Not all of them have got all these settings, but it just shows you how much you can put in, say, just for the glances widget. I mean, this is certainly not everything that I put in on my one. Then if I look at things like maybe, say, Home Assistant, which I'm also using, this will give you the information and the help around getting the Home Assistant widget part to work. So again, there's just the part for the widget part of the entry that you're going to put in. You don't have to put the widget stuff. You can just have a plain link to your Home Assistant if you want. I mean, the whole point of Dashboard is that all that stuff you commonly need to access and quickly access, you've got it on one page ready to use. Jellyfin, see, it's a little bit simpler. Sometimes it's just things you want to enable or disable. There's for Link Warden. So these are the various services that are supported at the moment, and there's quite a lot of them. Portainer over there, Qubit Torrent as well, Speed Test Tracker, Tailscale. And yeah, okay, so that is the service widgets. Then you've got the information widgets. There's a couple of them here, things like date and time. So these obviously go into a particular place, a particular config file as well. You do start off with the basics, so it's just a question of editing these out further, really. And you can set things like text sizes. There's again glances information widgets. There's a greeting as well, which I'm pretty sure I have set up. Logo, resources, and for example, stocks. So I did chat to the guy that was working with the stocks one, and unfortunately this is only supporting US stocks. There seems to be a bit of a problem with global stocks. So whatever can be accessed through this provider here, the finhub.io, you can probably get to display. So I've got some in just for demo so you can see how it is working, but I couldn't get, for example, South African stocks to work. We tried all sorts of odd ins and outs and things, but a lot of it seems to be with the limitations of the available information, especially for free users. You know, otherwise you're going to have either have a paid service or something else. So yeah, there's limitations on the back end really getting to the data to be able to display it. And then things like open weather map, search, and so on as well. Those are really the sort of the main widgets and service widgets that you can use. So I think let's go on and have a look at my dashboard. Then you can actually see what it actually looks like, and we can then dive into the configs a little bit more. So this is what my page looks like, and let me just point out a couple of things so that they are a little bit more obvious when we look at them inside the configs. The top left here is a logo. This one over here, this little pane, is the greeting that I set up. This is the information widget for the host server. So this is just giving a summary of the host server that my Docker containers are all running on. And you can see CPU load, memory, temperature, uptime, that sort of thing. So it's quite useful just as a quick glance to see what's going on. I've added a search information widget up here, and I've got a weather widget as well over there. The next line is quite interesting because this is one of the more recent things I set up. It started getting very long and crowded with just having everything listed below each other. So what I've done is I've separated it into sort of tabs. So this is my Open Media Vault server with all the various services running with their widgets and info widgets and so on. But I've also got for my VPS in the cloud, I can just click on that and switch to that quickly. Then I've got a tab over there for networks, and that's all my home network related things that I want to maybe quickly jump to. And then I've just got various general bookmarks in a separate tab. What you may notice is that, for example, this social one is separated or laid out in 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's got various rows. Some of these over here are just in individual columns on their own. And also what you will notice is this 4x4 off-road one. Well, it was a mistake, but I've left it in like this so you can see what happens. It appears at the bottom of every tab. So we're on bookmarks. If I go to networks, you'll see there's the 4x4 off-road, but the bookmark stuff disappeared. The Hetzner one, this is still at the bottom. And Open Media Vault, the same thing. It's at the bottom there. So you can specify what things must appear on what pages or across all pages. So let's just carry on working our way down here. On the Open Media Vault one now, this is the bookmark, I've got a couple of service widgets. These are all various service widgets that I've already configured. So you can get a feel for what the glances one will look like. It tells you it's running. Oh, in fact, I think why this one is showing it is this is actually one of the standard Docker widgets. It's not an information or service widget, sorry, for glances. Glances has got an odd thing. It runs either in a server mode or in a client mode. And when it's running in the server mode, you can log into the web page and use it and have a look at it. But I'm exporting data to a Prometheus database or the Influx database. I can't remember what. But the moment you do an export, it can only run in the client mode and you lose your server access. So that created some limitations around how I can access the glances data. Nothing to do with the homepage dashboard itself. So this is why it's showing running at the top there, because as I recall, this is actually just a Docker container stat it's showing. And it's just showing me the CPU, MEM, the RX, and the TX for networking for that container. So that's typically what you'd see for a container or many containers if you wanted to monitor them. Portainer is a proper service widget. So it's using an API and it's showing me that I've got 47 containers running. None are stopped, and there's a total of 47. Nginx Proxy Manager, I've migrated actually to using HA Proxy on my OpenSense firewall. So I've actually replaced Nginx Proxy Manager. This entry is still sitting here, but that's why it says error information at the moment. This would also be an indication, and it shows an example of if a service was not up or if it wasn't running sort of thing, you'd very quickly see on your dashboard, it'll show you API error information. So it's again another visual representation of whether your service is running. Then on Fresh RSS, my newsreader, which I use every single day, I've got 5 unread articles at the moment for today, and I've got 59 RSS feeds that I'm following. I've got change detection running. I'm watching a couple of web pages across the internet for things. So that, for example, is going to show there are 6 differences detected at the moment on pages that I need to have a look at, and I am watching 22 pages. Home Assistant, I'm just showing at the moment things like the power draw for the house and the percentage of the battery. Those are the most important things I need to watch. On Paperless NGX, which I've done a video on before, I've got nothing sitting in the inbox at the moment, but I've got 384 documents archived. Jellyfin, there's 2 views here for Jellyfin. This one is the services widget. So this is actually showing something quite interesting. First of all, it shows me how many movies, series, episodes, and songs I've got on Jellyfin at the moment. But a very interesting part is this: no active streams. So if somebody is watching, and I have actually got a screenshot I did of when 2 of us were watching Jellyfin, and I'm going to pop it up on the screen because it shows you what it will look like when there's a stream active. And very interesting, you can interact with those streams as well. So don't do this if your spouse is watching, but you can pause it from the screen. You can actually pause it and stop that stream, or start it, or whatever the case is as well. So that's quite an interesting little feature. So very functional little widget that. Tube Archivist, haven't done a video on this yet, but Tube Archivist essentially lets you click quickly on videos you're watching on YouTube to save them offline, and then watch them at your own leisure or rewatch them or whatever the case is, especially if they've disappeared later off YouTube. So this is just showing that I've got 105 videos in the queue still. I've got 219 in total. It's 112 different YouTube channels, and I've got 15 playlists that I've set up to sort of group my watching. Watchtower is the original service I was using for watching for container updates or image updates for Docker containers. I am up to date at the moment, so it's just showing there, well, none scanned at the moment. There's none that are ready for updates, and none have failed. Mastodon, this is just purely really an information widget, just showing you how many Mastodon users there are, 142 million posts and 93,000 domains. It shows how many different Mastodon servers and so on there really are, but it's just an information widget really. It's not much. If you click on it, it's going to take you to the service, and the same goes for any of these others. If I click on them, obviously the point of the dashboard being that not just to show you the information, but click on it and it's going to open the service for you quickly. Grafana, I use for my graphical dashboards, monitoring systems, that sort of thing. It's just showing I've got 9 dashboards, 4 different data sources, 2 alerts, and no alerts are triggered at the moment. Uptime Kuma, that is the one for my Open Media Vault server. It shows that I've got 13 sites up, none are down, there's been 99% uptime. It'll also run and work with Uptime Robot. I use this for monitoring my public services, the URLs actually, or the domain names, and it shows 12 are up, none are down. Bookmarks, this is like a read it later service. I can't remember if I've done a video about it, but anyway, yes, I have actually, because I've shown there how I've published some of my links that you can also follow or read yourself. I've got 1,990 links, different collections and tags. Open Media Vault, my server, what I'm monitoring here is the smart status of the 3 drives. So it's the 1 boot drive and the 2 RAID array drives. It's basically showing all the time, or showing now at the moment, that the smart status is passed. There's no issues there. Image photos, I've done a video about that as well. Got 5 different users, 9,000 photos, 751 videos, and you'll see now why I self-host image. I've run out of space. I can't really pay for 54 gigabytes of storage data in a cloud service. So this is why I really host that at home now. Prometheus, for stats and data scraping, I've got 4 targets. They're up, none are down. What's up Docker, which is my previous video I've just done, is the alternative now to using Watchtower. So what's up Docker, this is just the view that I see on my dashboard. It's basically saying I'm monitoring 45 different containers, and I've actually got 5 updates that I should apply at the moment. Sterling PDF, this is really where we see the ordinary links on the home page that do not have any service or other information. I have got a setting where I've set this just to keep the same size, because I don't really want on the end of one column, the last column, just to be a small one. It's going to leave an empty gap here. So I have told it to auto adjust that sort of thing. So that you'll see it's just a link to my Sterling PDF service, and I've got various other links here to Influx. This is just to watch your LAN, my CCTV cameras, Victron, Solon system, whatever the case is. And I think if you hover over them in the bottom left, if you watch here on the bottom left of a screen, you'll actually see the link. So that's the IP addresses that are being shown. In some cases, if it links to a service that I'm hosting publicly, it might also show you the URL. For example, there, the Grafana dashboard is dash.gadgeteer.co.za. So those are the plain links to open. So it's quick and easy for me. Like if I'm out of the house and I need to quickly access my Portainer and I can't remember what that IP address is, I can get into my dashboard and I can quickly just click and I'm in it. And these are the services that I really have to access daily or very regularly. Below that, we've just sorted a couple of other services. So whereas the Open Media Vault one is 4 columns wide and filling up whatever it needs, these have been set up to be 1 column wide. So you'll see that it's expanding downwards. In other words, I've got another little section called Ham Radio, and it's got a couple of specific links where I've grouped those links together for related things I need to access. Media is Jellyfin. Now this again is a Docker container view being shown. You'll see it's just showing CPU and memory usage, and it shows here at the top right healthy, which means that container is up. It's not showing you all the information from inside the Jellyfin service though. The stock markets, well, okay, I see the US market is closed at the moment, but otherwise this will be updating. This is an information widget. And these are just plain bookmark links. So these go into the bookmark.yaml file. And you'll see they show the link on the right. This is just expanding to fill up the space. So before we move on, I also just want to show you, you'll probably have noticed the background image here. You can set a background image. You can set to whether it blurs or not. In other words, you'll notice as I go down, it blurs behind where there's a link. So that's sort of what the blurring effect looks like. There's more than one way of actually getting that to work, but this is what I found worked very nicely for me. And then at the very bottom, you can change the highlight accent. So if you look over here at things like the text and these default icons, I'm using the white at the moment, but you could, for example, make them green or red or purple or whatever suits you really. That you can do on the front page. This is really just a reload button, and here at the bottom right, you can choose between day or night mode color, or dark or light mode, should I say. The very bottom right link here, and you'll see on the left it's popping up, is the link to the GitHub site. That's where you'll find the link. And when it was last updated, it did update about 3 days ago. So there's quite regular updates for this package as well. These are not really going to go through a lot of detail, except just to say that bear in mind, for some of these service widgets to work, the API needs to be accessible. So I haven't necessarily exposed all these APIs to the internet. So some of these are only really going to light up, like the Portainer one and so on, if I've logged in with my VPN into my VPS server. The Uptime Kuma is showing because that is a public service, or it's publicly facing service. So at any time it is linked and working. And yeah, these are just the services themselves that are remotely on my particular server. Yeah, networks I have shown. Basically, I'm just grouping together quick access to, and this is especially if I'm remote again, how do I get to these things? My KVM switch, my different network switches over here, my wireless AP, the Tailscale service that I'm using, CrowdSec for the IP blocking, my firewall, and ZenArmor as well. And yeah, the bookmarks, you can see they are also grouped under things like social, amateur radio, entertainment, news, whatever the case. So it's all nicely organized and easy. It's up to you really to fiddle around and get your layout the way you want it. And, you know, it may be YAML files, but it's very flexible. Once you sort of get the hang of it, and just experiment, just test and test. You know, if it doesn't work, test, fix a bit, look again. In this case, things like ChatGPT or Perplexity are really your friends as well in terms of help me set it up in a different way. You can put the code in and it'll give you suggestions on how to sort of fix the code. So I think just before I move on to showing you how it works and the config files, let me just show you also the mobile client, just to show you what it looks like. So this is the one of the pages on my Android phone. So typically if I'm now remote, this is what I'm going to do now quickly to access my service. I'm going to basically just open up Tailscale, and I'm going to say to Tailscale, just connect. And well, you'll see there a little red icon showing Tailscale is connected. So that is connected. Now I can drop straight into my LAN, and I'm just going to hit the icon, and you'll see there is the page. So it's obviously now exactly the same, except it's rearranged itself for a mobile view. And the little tabs are still working there as well. You can click between the tabs. Oops, I don't know why it went down. That's interesting there. But you've got your service widgets and everything showing you the status of those services. And it's just really a click now to access any one of those services that you need to actually use. So yeah, that's very much the mobile view. Nothing really dramatically different at all. It's really just the layout that changes. So with that, I think let's go and have a look at some of the config files. I have already published these into my online Pastebin sort of repository. So I'm going to actually click on this ls URL shortener here service. It's a nice, quick, easy way for me just to find where I've saved the various config files. So I'm going to use that to show you also how you just click on a link and access it, because the microbin, you are not able to actually anyway view a listing of what there really is. I'll obviously paste the quick links below the video that you can access every one of these that I'm showing you now, but just to show you how you navigate. So if you click on this URL shortener in the browser, it quickly opens up that site. And the relevant ones we're going to be looking at here are these ones at the top here. So we can start off with the simpler ones and sort of finish off more diving into the Docker Compose and the various other files. So the Docker YAML file is just a simple file that you are going to activate for this container, the homepage container, to access the Docker containers. If you wanted to show those stats views or those Docker views that I showed you where they were healthy or running, you just need to activate this, and that page is as simple as that, really. There's nothing more to it than that. I can just quickly show you what the config files look like that I'm talking about at the moment. There is one of your mapped volumes for your container is going to contain your various YAML files. So you'll see, for example, there is a secrets.yaml. Oh, actually, sorry, that doesn't exist. I was trying to see if that worked. That doesn't exist. But you will find things like a widgets.yaml, a settings.yaml, services, proxmox, Kubernetes, Docker, and bookmarks. These are the ones I'm really going to be showing you now, but they are found in the mapped volume for the home page container. I just don't want to open all of these because, like I said, they've got API settings and so on in them. Right, that is actually the Docker one. Let's just go and have a look at the others then. The next one we can just have a look at is the bookmarks.yaml file. I'll open that one up. It looks like this. And you'll see, first of all, what's important here is the very first entry that is left aligned with a dash. That is going to be one of the group headings. So you'll see this is social, and then underneath it, indented in, is all the ones that I've added. And if you need to add another one or so, it's not difficult. You basically just highlight it, copy it, and paste it underneath the last one over here and just edit it accordingly. So you'll see icons. The GitHub site does have links, but it makes use of various standardized icons as well. So in many cases, it'll often just be the name of the service. So I found that just Friendica, Hubzilla, Mastodon, or whatever worked fairly well. But it will make use of various standardized icons, and we'll see some of them just now when these have to expand, I think with the MDI icons, that sort of thing. But yes, just basically an icon and a href. That's the very basic entry that you actually need for a bookmark to work. These abbreviations is you can type HU or whatever on the screen, and it will then also just open it up quickly. I don't really use that because I can't remember all those things really, to be honest. Then, yeah, I just want to see, I've got amateur radio. I don't think these have got any interesting icons and so on set. Entertainment, news, and this is really it for the bookmarks. It's not really very difficult. What you'll just notice here, though, is that 4x4 one I mentioned that appeared on every screen, it's not in the bookmarks.yaml file. So that's probably why also you're seeing it on every single screen. This at the moment just is appearing on one tab, that bookmarks tab. Then the next one we're going to have a look at is the services one. So this is the key one that shows you various information about those services. And again, it just comprises of sections. So in no particular order really, is left aligned again is going to be the main heading, and then under that will be whatever appears there. So stocks does appear twice. I think the intention is you could have multiple stocks under a section if you wanted to. But yes, this is fairly standard. As you can see, I tried to use the ones for some of the South African stocks, tested various ways. Even though that was in that service, it still doesn't appear here. So I'm open to ideas on that working. OMV was my Open Media Vault. That was the main section. I've blanked out the original Glances one, but this would have been the code when Glances was running in server mode. This would have worked and was working for it to bring back the data, the services information. Then I've got, and remember, these are indented inwards as subcategories of OMV up there. There's the Portainer one. And what's of interest again is the icon is just using Portainer. That's a standard one. There's the actual widget information. And you can see that's all that's required. You get all that from the page I showed you before. But what you're going to be editing is normally just the URL, maybe the environment, and the secret key, of course, that you need to add there. Nginx proxy. I'm not going to go through every one of these in detail. There's AdGuard Home that I'm not using there anymore. I just wanted to have a look down here. So Jellyfin was a little bit more complex, and there are various things that you can set for it, but this will show you how I got mine to work. Watchtower, Grafana. Again, all these icons are actually standard as well, but you can go through this code and cut and paste from it if you want to. Then I've got the next section, which was Hetzner VPS. You'll see again that is left aligned up there, and indented is the little sections under that, the links under that. So there are some that you'll see there are parameters or settings you can use for the icon. So there is Nextcloud with options like dash white or dark or blue or whatever the case is. I just want to see if there's anything else that's sort of particular interest here to highlight. Microbin, Joplet, Wallabag. I used to have another VPS called Uptime VPS. I've left it's in the code, but it's essentially I've deleted that VPS. On the ham radio side, you'll see here, for example, is an interesting example. One of the links there is to my OpenSpot 3 device. And the icon you'll see is using the MDI standard for icons. So I went to the site that lists all the MDI icons, and I found one called speaker-Bluetooth. And then essentially, you just put that in like this, MDI-speaker-Bluetooth, or whatever the case is, and they can use those icons in homepage as well. Here's another example for OpenWebRx. I use something called radio, an MDI icon. Then the next section there is networks. There again, it's a left aligned for the main heading and the various entries under that. I think under the settings, we're going to see more clearly how these were laid out differently, on that page. But that then is the services.yaml file. The next one we can just have a look at is the widgets.yaml file. Okay, these are all made use of. So you'll see there, for example, is how I put the logo in. It's a left-aligned heading dash logo, and you put your icon in with a full path link to wherever that image is. So you could actually point to anybody's image, I suppose, on the internet, but just remember it needs to be a fully resolvable address. Then there's the greeting part. It's just dash greeting as the heading, and you can set things like the text size and then what the text needs to be. The resources was an information widget at the top there. You'll see it's a dash resources. There's probably, I think, more than these as well if you look in the help, but you can set various things to show as true or false. Or in other words, if if there's something that was by default there, you might have to make it false so that it doesn't appear. But otherwise, you can add to these and just say true. The search, you have got the option also of choosing from various providers. That's something you can set. And for the weather widget at that top right, or that information widget, you'd use the Open Weather Map or whatever the provider you'll be using. And various of that information you can then fill in over here, as well as your API key and so on to make that work. The homepage settings file is now where we're going to see a little bit more control over that layout of the page. A lot of these are optional, but you can fill in things like a title for the page. And I think you did see that on the mobile view as well when I opened it. The favicon again, that you can define. That's the little icon that you're going to see on the tab in the browser. The start URL for where it needs to start. I mean, you could get this to start also on one of your tabs if you wanted to. One of the other tabs, not the first one, and that's probably how you're going to set it up there. There is the background image. So again, it needed to be a publicly resolvable image. And you can also set the brightness. So it does give you an idea here of options from 0, up to 100 or whatever the case is. You can also set a blur factor, but I didn't blur it over here because it says to you over here, if you want to use the card blur option, which I showed you, remember the image was clear in the background, but as you moved your cards or your links up or down, they blurred the background. So just remember, if you use this card blur, I'd set it for SM, then it's going to clash with the one up here, and this is why I had commented that line out. Then I did also explain about the equal heights. Remember where I showed a column where I had one of my bookmarks would have been a shorter entry, but I wanted it aligned to the same height as the other cards, next to it at least. This is where I said to it, use equal heights true. So that's where you set that. Then the other thing is for your opening of the links. I mean, I preferred to have it opening into a new tab. So you can set options here like target as _blank, and it tells you there what some of the options are, top, self, or blank. Again, these are expanded on in the help itself. Then the header style. For header style, I've chosen boxed widgets, but again, they'll show various other options for you. But the important part here was really the layout. So I have put some additional help here where I could figure some of this out. And I've said common tabs are grouped together. Columns determine how many vertical columns are next to each other. And the style row means the entries are stacked or listed vertically in multiple rows. So under layout, I've now really said that I've got Open Media Vault, which was one of those tabs, remember? I showed there's a tab called OMV, and that's why you saw it on the page up there. The style is going to be a row, and the columns are going to be 4. Remember I showed you it was 4 columns wide for the Open Media Vault. Ham radio is going to be linked to the tab OMV, and that is why on that page when we clicked on the tab for OMV, you saw ham radio and media and stocks and so on, but you didn't see it when we clicked onto the other tabs. It's because all these have shared the common value of tab as OMV, and that's why they're grouped together. For the Hetzner VPS, that was another tab. You'll see it has been given the tab name Hetzner VPS, and because it's the only one there, that's all that shows on that page. Networks was a different tab, and you'll see that is why it has got a tab called Networks. Nothing else grouped underneath it because there's no other further entries also with that same tab name. But I have played around a little bit with the settings here. So you'll see this one's got a column of only 2 in the style of row, whereas this one had columns of 4 in the style row. Then, let me just have a look a bit further down. Social was on a tab though called bookmarks. So this is what made it appear there. It's in 4 columns as well in the style of row. Amateur radio, entertainment, news, health and fitness are all got that same value tab set as bookmarks, and that's why they all group together. This took a little bit of time for me to figure out how this grouping and so on worked, so I hope this is going to help some other people. Then providers, remember we're under the settings at the moment. It was just for Open Weather Map. I had to set the API key, so that would have been there. Oh, sorry, that was Open Weather Map. I have actually commented that out. But FinHub for that finance service for the stocks, the API key was defined over here. Then Quick Launch is just functionality there, which I've just got some settings set for. The search description. This is for that search. If you use that search bar, how it sort of works. You can see the provider is set there as DuckDuckGo, hide the visit URL false, and so on. And the Docker stats I've got expanded here. This is where you will show stats true or false, and I've just got it set for true. Then that really does cover all those various setup and config files as far as I've configured them so far. The only really other thing I want to show is the Docker Compose file. There is actually no menu here to go through, so there's nothing like that I'm going to show in this video. But this is my complete Docker Compose file, and really all we need to note here is, well, the image is the standard one. I'm just using the latest one. I like to set the container name and the host name, just so that it doesn't give some garbled sort of appearance inside Portainer when I'm looking at it. And then the environment, there was one thing of interest here. So the PUID, I can't remember if that was standard or if this is the one that I've just got using standard on my server, but the important one was the group ID over here, equals 995. They've got some help on their page as well about how to determine what the group ID is. But the point is, you need to set the correct group ID so that the socket access will work to get the Docker stats. If you're not accessing the Docker stats, then this is not going to be that important, but I'm just pointing out that that's something you might have to set. Your time zone is something you can set. And the allowed hosts for the homepage service, I've got set here to my server with the correct port number that's actually in use. The label side is not really of importance. All I'm really doing here is I'm telling Watchtower to be enabled to watch for updates, and I'm still using the WhatsApp Docker for updates. And in my video there, I did explain a little bit more about what display name is and why I'm using tags and so on. The ports are going to be important if you're accessing this via IP address on your local area network. So what's of importance is don't change, especially the one on the right. That's your internal port inside the container. That's always going to stay the same. The external one, you can change it to whatever doesn't clash with any other ports in use on your server. In my case, I'm using 3200. And then the other thing that is important are the 2 volume mappings. I've got one set, and remember on the, well, we're not actually seeing now, unfortunately, on the right-hand side. I'll just have to scroll a little bit right, but the important thing is there's two sides to your volume mapping, and it relates to this little colon over here. The right-hand side of it, don't change anything there. That again is the internal address inside the container, the app/config. The left side is going to be the physical location on your host server where your config files are going to be residing. Remember, I showed that view of what my various YAML files look like. That's this location that you've mapped there. And the next one is just a mapping to the Docker sock file. So again, what it's just doing here really is it's telling the container that for that internal path inside your container, look instead to this external path on the server, the docker.sock location. And I've just got there a restart unless stopped as another standard for my container. And that's basically it. There's really not much more to say. As I said, because this is YAML file driven, there is no menu settings and so on for me to go through in this video. But I hope it was of some interest to you. As I said, in summary again, the big power I think for homepage versus some others is its speed. It's quick. I mean, you can see here, just clicking or anything like that, it's fast. I can say reload over here and you'll see it comes up just about instantaneously. It's a little bit more difficult to build up the YAML files, but I think what's made up for that is the pure flexibility you've got in terms of things like layout and, you know, widget information and other things you can show in it. So it's for you to decide really which is going to be your sort of bigger focus. I'm actually really enjoying this once it's now been set up and so on. It's just every now and again I add a service or update something. It's really not much of a problem to work with. I'm finding it incredibly useful, and certainly for me it's quite important because not only for that quick access to a service, but also if I'm remotely outside of my house and I do need to look at something, is something running, do I need to quickly get into a container to restart something, that sort of thing, I can now find what I need to do very quickly. I don't have to mess around with bookmarks inside mobile browsers, and I often change browsers, for example, as well. This is why this becomes my hub really for quickly finding my various services. So yeah, I hope it was also of some interest, and stay safe out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.